welcome. Are you ready to start writing? Let's get right to it.
In this video, we will focus on point of view in writing, tone, and what is the best choice for your story. Who is the best character to tell it? The hero, a sidekick, or even a mouse? In the book To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee, Atticus Finch says, "You never really understand a person until you consider things from his point of view, until you climb inside of his skin and walk around in it." As writers, we need to think about which point of view will express the story. Third-person point of view is more involved with the plot and moving the story along, whereas first person focuses on a specific character. First-person narrative is very popular in modern novels. It's a way for a writer to form an immediate connection with the reader. You know his feelings and thoughts, whether you agree with them or not. An example of first-person central narrative is the book Jane Eyre, the story of an orphan girl, where she is the main character. In the novel The Great Gatsby, the narrative is also first person, but the character who's talking, Nick Carraway, is not the main character. He lives next door to Gatsby, who is the protagonist. This point of view can be called peripheral. The second person point of view is usually used for short pieces of writing where we would give instructions or directions as if talking to you. This would be in recipes where you would say, "First, you beat the eggs, then you add the sugar, now sift in the flour," etc. Or perhaps explaining how to repair something or how to do something. So we are addressing a person directly. In third-person narrative, also referred to as third-person omniscient, the writer can talk about anyone or anything. You can get into anyone's head and describe their thoughts or feelings, and you can describe any environment without having to wait for your main character to see it first. An example of this is the book Lord of the Flies by William Golding, where a group of schoolboys crash on a deserted island. The boy with fair hair lowered himself down the last few feet of rock and began to pick his way toward the lagoon. Though he had taken off his school sweater and trailed it now from one hand, his grey shirt stuck to him and his hair was plastered to his forehead. All around him, the long scar smashed into the jungle was a bath of heat. He was clambering heavily among the creepers and broken trunks when a bird, a vision of red and yellow, flashed upwards with a witch-like cry, and this cry was echoed by another. Third-person limited is another option often used in stories for children because although the writer is omniscient, he focuses on the feelings and thoughts of the main character. An example of this is The Secret Garden by Frances Hodgson Burnett, where a little girl is orphaned and travels to England to live with her uncle in a mansion. Mary sees a bird in the garden. She stopped and listened to him, and somehow his cheerful, friendly little whistle gave her a pleased feeling. Even a disagreeable little girl may be lonely, and the big closed house and the big bare moor and big bare gardens had made this one feel as if there was no one left in the world but herself. If she had been an affectionate child who had been used to being loved, she would have broken her heart. But even though she was Mistress Mary quite contrary, she was desolate, and the bright-breasted little bird brought a look into her sour little face, which was almost a smile. In a first-person narrative, a writer needs to show the character of the narrator by his tone, the way he behaves and reacts to others. The narrator may be a hero or villain, or even a horse, like Black Beauty, written by Anna Sewell. So let's think about your character. What would he be doing? What would he be saying? Complaining that he's hungry, or asking his friend not to let the dog out because he has a phobia about animals. Perhaps he's the one in the group who loves ice cream and takes special care when getting ready each day. But he's also quite a risk taker. It's easier to begin with what you know than to jump into a character who is totally unfamiliar to you. If you start by writing from the point of view of a biker girl, but you have no knowledge of motorbikes or the environment and people, it will seem very unrealistic. And if you want to write as a knight in medieval times, you would need to do research on the time period, the words used then, clothing, food, etc. Unless you are prepared to do this research, choose a character you understand and know. Maybe start with yourself. Then think of the tone of your character. What would the voice sound like? Will it be cheeky, like the Artful Dodger in Oliver Twist, or depressed, sad, or lonely? Perhaps the character is determined and ambitious. If a writer looks back over memories, she could be contented and nostalgic. Humorous writers like to use an ironic or sarcastic tone. And then, if you write with your villain's point of view, the tone may be vengeful or even cruel. As a writer, it could help you to take a look at famous speeches to see tone coming through clearly. Winston Churchill wanted to build morale of his nation and motivate people when he addressed them in 1940. We shall not flag nor fail. We shall go on to the end. We shall fight in France and on the seas and oceans. We shall fight with growing confidence and growing strength in the air. We shall defend our island, whatever the cost may be. We shall fight on beaches, landing grounds, in fields, in streets, and on the hills. We shall never surrender. Queen Elizabeth I had a similar objective when she made her speech at Tilbury: determined, courageous, and bold. I know I have the body of a weak, feeble woman, but I have the heart and stomach of a king, and of a king of England too, and I think foul scorn that Parma or Spain or any prince of Europe should dare to invade the borders of my realm, to which rather than any dishonour shall grow by me, I myself will take up arms. I myself will be your general, judge, and rewarder of every one of your virtues in the field. On the other hand, Mother Teresa's Nobel speech was very humble and self-sacrificing. There is so much suffering, so much hatred, so much misery, and we, with our prayer, with our sacrifice, are beginning at home. Love begins at home, and it is not how much we do, but how much love we put in the action that we do. It is to God Almighty. How much we do it does not matter, because He is infinite, but how much love we put in that action, how much we do to Him in the person that we are serving. We will look at the character of the orphan child with 3 examples, 2 in third person point of view and 1 in first person. The stories are so different. Heidi is a little girl in the Swiss Alps, Mowgli a boy in the jungles of India, and David Copperfield a boy in Victorian England. But all 3 suffer the challenges of being alone in the world and needing help and support and guidance from a loving, dependable source. These are universal stories that could happen anywhere, and the children's need for love and friendship resonates with us all, making them classic books that have been retold in many ways. In this passage, Heidi is being taken to her grandfather by her aunt. On a bright June morning, 2 figures, one a tall girl and the other a child, could be seen climbing a narrow mountain path that winds up from the pretty village of Meinfeld to the lofty heights of the Elm Mountain. In spite of the hot June sun, the child was clothed as if to keep off the bitterest frost. She did not look more than 5 years old, but what her natural figure was like would be hard to say, for she had on apparently 2 dresses, one above the other, and over these a thick red woolen shawl. Her small feet were shod in thick-nailed mountain shoes. In the story of the Jungle Book, Mowgli is adopted by wolves as a baby. Now you must be content to skip 10 or 11 whole years and only guess at all the wonderful life that Mowgli led among the wolves, because if it were written out, it would fill ever so many books. He grew up with the cubs, though they, of course, were grown wolves almost before he was a child, and Father Wolf taught him his business and the meaning of things in the jungle, till every rustle in the grass, every breath of the warm night air, every note of the owls above his head, every scratch of a bat's claws as it roosted for a while in a tree, and every splash of every little fish jumping in a pool meant just as much to him as the work of his office means to a businessman. When he was not learning, he sat out in the sun and slept and ate and went to sleep again. When he felt dirty or hot, he swam in the forest pools, and when he wanted honey, Baloo told him that honey and nuts were just as pleasant to eat as raw meat. He climbed up for it, and that Bagheera showed him how to do. David Copperfield begins his story with his birth, introducing himself. Whether I shall turn out to be the hero of my own life, or whether that station will be held by anybody else, these pages must show. To begin my life, with the beginning of my life, I record that I was born, as I have been informed and believe, on a Friday at 12 o'clock at night. It was remarked that the clock began to strike and I began to cry simultaneously. In your task today, use the examples you have seen and write a story based on the point of view of an orphan child. He begins life in a vulnerable situation, engaging the sympathy of the reader. We want to know what will become of him. We want him to overcome his obstacles. Write the beginning of a story that uses both first and third person points of view. My first memory was walking on the sand towards a great blue expanse. So the first example is using first person perspective and describing a child's first view of the ocean. The boy had never seen the ocean. In this example, we need to think of third-person perspective and include everyone's point of view or descriptions. See where the story takes you. Enjoy your writing. If you would like more writing tips and advice, you can follow my Substack blog, or you can find me on Patreon for conversation, dialogue, and English language. And then look on Facebook and Instagram for updates. Take a look at my books on Amazon. They are available as ebooks or paperback. Thank you.